When my daughter told me she was kicking me out of my own home, I collapsed into my chair, feeling like the earth had opened beneath me. Days later, I was sitting across from a lawyer who showed me what my late husband had hidden from us both. That's when I realized family isn't just a safety net. Sometimes it's the very trap that's been set to catch you. If you're watching this right now, hit that subscribe button and tell me where you're watching from. Because trust me, what happened to me could happen to anyone. And this story twists harder than a tornado in a trailer park. My name is Margaret Wilson, and 5 years ago, I became a widow. My husband Thomas and I had been married for 32 years when his heart gave out one ordinary Tuesday morning. One minute he was complaining about the coffee being too strong, the next he was gone. Our daughter Emily was 25 then, just starting her career in marketing. The three of us had always been close, at least that's what I believed. After Thomas died, I threw myself into being there for Emily. I'd always been a devoted mother, but grief made me cling even tighter to my only child. When she struggled with deadlines, I'd bring her home-cooked meals. When she was too busy to clean her apartment, I'd drive across town to do her laundry. I know now I should have given her space to grow, but hindsight has perfect vision, doesn't it? Last spring, Emily started dating a new man named Richard. Handsome, charming, with the kind of smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. I had my reservations from the start, but mothers learn to bite their tongues. Emily was smitten. Within 3 months, she was talking about moving in with him. "He's ambitious, Mom," she'd say, eyes shining with admiration. "Richard says I shouldn't limit myself. He says I have potential." The first time I met Richard at a dinner I hosted, he spent most of the evening asking about our family finances. I chalked it up to him being practical. After all, if they were getting serious, these were natural questions. But something in my gut twisted when he specifically asked about Thomas's will and our house. Script part separator . The house, that beautiful 3-bedroom colonial that Thomas and I had scraped and saved for. We'd bought it when Emily was just 3, and I'd planted every flower in the garden with my own hands. After Thomas died, his pension and our savings let me keep up with the mortgage. Not comfortably, mind you, but I managed. "Your father put everything in both our names," I told Richard that night. When he passed, it all came to me. Richard nodded, that smile never wavering.
"Smart man."
"But it must be a burden. All that responsibility." Emily laughed. "Mom's tougher than she looks." 2 weeks after that dinner, Emily invited me to lunch at her apartment. I remember it was raining, the kind of spring downpour that soaks you to the bone. I'd brought her favorite lemon squares, still warm from the oven. Her apartment was immaculate, which should have been my first clue something was wrong. Emily had never been tidy. Richard was there too, standing behind her like a shadow as she sat me down. "Mom," she said, not touching the lemon squares, "we need to talk about the house." I nodded, thinking maybe they wanted to move in with me. Save money for a wedding. I would have welcomed them. "The thing is," Emily continued, "Richard and I have been looking at our finances, and we've found a solution that works for everyone." Richard stepped forward then. "Margaret, the housing market is hot right now. If you sold, you could make a significant profit." I blinked, confused. "But why would I sell? That's my home." Emily reached across the table, patting my hand like I was a child who didn't understand basic math. "Mom, you can't afford it. You're just too proud to admit it." "I'm making the payments just fine," I insisted, though it wasn't entirely true. "Some months were tight." "We've spoken to a financial advisor," Emily said. "And we've already contacted a realtor." The words hit me like ice water. "You did what?" Script part separator . Richard cleared his throat. "The papers have already been drawn up. We can list it next week." My throat tightened as I realized what was happening. "You're selling my house? Without even asking me?" Emily's eyes hardened in a way I'd never seen before. "Mom, it's not just her house. Dad's will split everything between us." This was news to me. "That's not true. Your father put everything in my name." "Actually," Richard interjected, pulling out a folder, "Thomas's will clearly states Emily inherits half of all assets. We've had our lawyer look into it." I stared at the document, he slid across the table, a copy of Thomas's will I'd never seen before. My hands shook as I scanned the pages. "This can't be real," I whispered. "It is," Emily said flatly. "And we've decided it's best to liquidate the asset. You'll get your half, of course. Where am I supposed to go?" My voice sounded small, even to my own ears. "There are lovely senior communities," Richard suggested, as if he was doing me a favor. "Much less maintenance. You're not getting any younger, Margaret." I was 62, not 92. "This is my home. I'm not leaving." Emily's expression hardened further. "Mom, I don't think you understand. We're not asking. The house is going on the market next Monday. You have 30 days to find somewhere else." "You can't do this," I said, my voice breaking. Actually, Richard smiled that cold smile. "We can, and we will." The room spun around me. My own daughter, my only child, was throwing me out of my home. I stood up, nearly knocking over my chair. "Emily, think about what you're doing." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's already done, Mom. The realtor is coming tomorrow to take pictures." I grabbed my purse and stumbled toward the door, the lemon squares forgotten on the table. "We're doing this for your own good," Emily called after me. "You'll thank us later." I didn't look back. The rain soaked through my clothes as I made it to my car, tears mixing with the downpour. How had it come to this? My daughter, my sweet Emily, conspiring behind my back to take my home. That night, I barely slept. By morning, grief had hardened into something else: determination. If Emily thought I would roll over and surrender my home without a fight, she had another thing coming. Script part separator equals. I didn't know much about legal matters, but I knew enough to realize I needed help. Fast. With shaking hands, I pulled out Thomas's old address book. My husband had been methodical about maintaining connections, unlike me who'd let friendships slide while focusing on family. Near the back, I found what I was looking for: David Kessler, attorney at law. David had been Thomas's college roommate and remained his friend for decades. I'd met him only a handful of times at dinner parties and Thomas's funeral. I wasn't even sure if he was still practicing, but I was desperate. His office was in a converted Victorian downtown, the kind of place that screamed old money and discretion. I dressed in my best pantsuit, the one I'd worn to Thomas's funeral, hoping to make a good impression. "Margaret Wilson," David said, rising from behind his massive oak desk. He'd aged since I'd last seen him, his hair now completely silver, deep lines around his eyes. "I was surprised to get your call. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Thomas was like a brother to me," he replied, gesturing to a leather chair. "I've always wondered how you were doing." The kindness in his voice nearly broke me. I'd been so alone since Thomas died, more than I'd admitted even to myself. Not well, as it turns out. I pulled out the copy of the will Richard had shown me. "My daughter and her new boyfriend are trying to sell my house out from under me. They claim Thomas left her half of everything." David's eyebrows shot up as he took the document. He studied it for a long moment, his frown deepening. "May I?" he asked, turning to his computer. "I'd like to check something." While he typed, I stared at the framed photographs on his wall, David and Thomas in graduation caps, on fishing trips, at parties. The life my husband had outside our marriage that I'd barely glimpsed. "Margaret," David said finally, removing his glasses. "This document isn't Thomas's final will." My heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" "Thomas came to see me about a month before he died. He made changes to his will, significant ones." David opened a drawer and pulled out a file. "This is the executed final version. I have it on file because I was the executing attorney." My hands trembled as I took the document. "Read page 3, David said quietly. There it was in black and white. Thomas had left the house solely to me. Emily would receive a trust fund that would mature when she turned 30, but the house was mine alone. But Emily showed me an earlier draft," David finished. "And a poorly executed one at that. The signatures aren't even properly witnessed." He leaned forward. "Margaret, someone's trying to con you. Script part separator equals. The revelation hit me like a freight train. I sank back in the leather chair, trying to make sense of it all. So Emily's lying to me, I whispered, the words painful to even say aloud. David's expression softened. Perhaps she's been misled. This Richard fellow. What do you know about him? Not much, I admitted. They've only been dating a few months. He works in real estate development. Real estate, David repeated thoughtfully. He typed something into his computer. Richard what? Blackwood. Richard Blackwood. David's fingers flew across the keyboard. His eyebrows shot up. Margaret, take a look at this. He turned the monitor toward me. On the screen was a news article from 2 years ago. Local developer Richard Blackwood under investigation for elder fraud scheme. My stomach dropped. Oh my God. This gets worse, David said grimly, scrolling down. He's been linked to 3 cases where he persuaded elderly homeowners to sell valuable properties at below market rates. The charges were eventually dropped when witnesses became uncooperative. He's using my daughter to get my house, I said, the pieces clicking together. It appears so. And he's created a false document to convince her she has legal standing. David leaned back. We need to move quickly. They've already set things in motion. What do we do? First, we file an emergency injunction to stop any sale. Then we need to gather evidence of this fraud. David's eyes narrowed. And we need to open your daughter's eyes before she gets in too deep with this con artist. I felt dizzy with betrayal and worry. Emily won't believe me. She's completely under his spell. Then we'll need to be strategic. David tapped his pen against the desk. When's the realtor coming to photograph the house? Tomorrow morning. A small smile played at David's lips. Perfect. I think I'll pay a visit to your home tomorrow. With the proper documentation, of course. For the first time since that awful lunch, I felt a glimmer of hope. Thank you, David. Don't thank me yet. His expression grew serious. This is going to get messy, Margaret. Family conflicts always do. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my beautiful home, about Thomas, about the daughter I'd raised and loved. I don't have a choice. Script part separator equals. I left David's office with a war plan and a knot of determination in my stomach. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about protecting my daughter from a predator, even if she couldn't see it herself. That night, I barely slept. I spent hours digging through old boxes in the attic, finding every document related to our home purchase, Thomas's death, and our finances. By dawn, I had a timeline of our entire financial history spread across the dining room table. The doorbell rang at precisely 9 a.m. I'd been waiting in the kitchen, dressed in my gardening clothes but with full makeup on. When I opened the door, Emily stood there with a slim blonde woman holding a camera and a clipboard. Mom, Emily said, looking uncomfortable. This is Sandra from Lakeview Realty. She's here too. Take pictures. I know I interrupted smoothly. Please come in. Emily's eyes narrowed suspiciously. You're being awfully cooperative. Why wouldn't I be? I smiled. It's such a lovely home. I'm sure it will photograph beautifully. Sandra looked between us, clearly sensing tension. Should I start with the exterior shots? Actually, I said, would you mind if we reviewed some paperwork first? Just so everything's above board. What paperwork? Emily demanded. The doorbell rang again. Right on cue. That must be my lawyer, I said pleasantly. I invited him to join us. For clarity's sake. Emily's face flushed. You called a lawyer? I opened the door to David, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. He nodded politely. Mrs. Wilson, good morning. And this must be Emily. Mom, what is this? Emily hissed. Just making sure everything's legitimate, sweetheart. David, would you explain the situation to Sandra? David smiled professionally at the realtor. Ma'am, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding about the ownership of this property. He produced a folder. These are the property deed and my client's late husband's final will. As you can see, Mrs. Wilson is the sole owner of this residence. Sandra glanced at the documents, then at Emily. This property isn't co-owned? No, it is. Emily insisted. My father left me half. Script part separator equals. David cleared his throat, unfolding reading glasses and placing them deliberately on his nose. I'm afraid that's incorrect, Emily. I was your father's attorney and personal friend for 30 years. I drafted his final will myself. Emily snatched the papers from Sandra's hands, her eyes scanning frantically. This can't be right. Richard showed me. An earlier draft, I finished quietly. Or a forgery. The color drained from Emily's face. That's ridiculous. Richard wouldn't. Richard Blackwood? David interjected, his tone deceptively casual. The same Richard Blackwood, who was investigated for real estate fraud targeting seniors 2 years ago? Sandra the realtor took a step back, clutching her camera to her chest. I think I should reschedule this appointment until the ownership matter is clarified. There's nothing to clarify, I said firmly. The deed and will are clear. This house is mine alone. The realtor nodded, already edging toward the door. I'll need to see proper documentation before proceeding with any listing. Good day, ladies. After she left, Emily rounded on me, her face contorted with rage and confusion. What are you doing? You're ruining everything. I'm protecting you, I said, my heart breaking at the hatred in her eyes. Richard is using you to get to my house. That's insane. He loves me. We're building a future together. David placed the true will on the coffee table. Emily, your father wanted you to have security, not property. There's a trust fund that matures when you turn 30. Her eyes widened. A trust fund? Yes, I said. Your father wanted to make sure you were established in your career before receiving a large sum of money. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded. The accusation stung. Because it wasn't relevant until you turned 30. And honestly, I wanted you to make your own way without waiting for an inheritance. Emily shook her head. Richard is going to be furious. I'm counting on it, David said grimly. Script part separator equals. Emily stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the family photos rattled on the wall. I sank onto the sofa, exhausted though the day had barely begun. That went about as well as expected, David said, sitting across from me. She hates me. She's confused. And embarrassed. He gathered his papers. Richard will try to salvage this situation. Be prepared. I wasn't prepared for how quickly Richard would strike. That evening, my doorbell rang incessantly while someone pounded on the door. When I peeked through the curtains, I saw Richard's expensive car in my driveway. Margaret, open this door right now. His voice carried through the neighborhood. I called David, who advised me not to engage. Record everything. Don't let him in. I set my phone to record video and opened the door a crack, security chain in place. Richard's face was flushed with rage. You manipulative old witch. How dare you interfere? Please leave my property, I said calmly. Property that should be half Emily's. You forged that will, didn't you? You and that lawyer friend cooked this up to cheat your own daughter. I kept my voice steady. David was Thomas's attorney for 30 years. The will is legitimate. We'll see about that. He jabbed a finger toward me. Emily's devastated. Is that what you wanted? To destroy your relationship with your only child? I want to protect her from you. His laugh was ugly. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Margaret. I have connections you can't imagine. Are those the same connections that helped you target elderly homeowners in your fraud scheme? His eyes widened, then narrowed dangerously. You'll regret this. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be begging to sell. Is that a threat? It's a promise. He smiled coldly. Sleep well, Margaret. As his car screeched away, my phone rang. It was Emily. Mom, she sobbed. What have you done? Richard says you've ruined everything. He says we might have to break up because of this. My heart cracked. Sweetheart, if he leaves you over money, what does that tell you? That my mother is a selfish, greedy woman who won't help her own daughter build a future. The line went dead. I sat in my dark kitchen until midnight, wondering how my life had spun so wildly out of control. The house that had once been my sanctuary now felt like a prison of memories and betrayal. Script part separator equals. The next morning, I woke to the sound of breaking glass. I rushed downstairs in my nightgown to find my living room window shattered. A brick lay among the glittering shards, wrapped in paper secured with a rubber band. With trembling hands, I unwrapped it. Sell or else. I called the police immediately. The officer who responded, a young man named Diaz, walked through my home taking notes while I explained the situation. "Do you have any security cameras, Mrs. Wilson?" he asked. "No," I admitted. "Never thought I needed them." "Well, you might want to consider it now." He examined the brick. "This could be random vandalism, but given your situation..." I knew better. This was Richard escalating. After Officer Diaz left, promising increased patrols, I called David. "He's not backing down," I told him. "In fact, he's getting dangerous." David's voice was grim. "We need to move faster. I've been doing some digging into Mr. Blackwood's background. There are 3 other cases that match his pattern. Get close to vulnerable family members, convince them to pressure older relatives to sell valuable properties." The police couldn't make charges stick because witnesses withdrew complaints. Why would they do that? Fear, pressure, threats, like the brick through your window. He paused. "Margaret, do you have somewhere else you can stay?" The thought of leaving my home made my stomach clench. "No. I'm not letting him win. This isn't about winning anymore. It's about your safety." I thought about it. My brother Calvin lived about an hour away. We weren't close. He'd always been Thomas's ally more than mine, but he wouldn't turn me away. I suppose I could stay with my brother for a few days. Good. Pack a bag. In the meantime, I'm going to speak with the prosecutor who handled the previous cases against Richard. There might be a pattern we can use. After hanging up, I went upstairs to pack. That's when I noticed my bedroom had been disturbed. Subtle things. The jewelry box slightly askew. The drawer with my personal documents not fully closed. Someone had been in my house. Going through my things. Script part separator ===. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a scream. I grabbed my phone to call 911 but paused. What if they were still in the house? I tiptoed to the window and saw no unfamiliar cars. After a careful search of each room, I was alone but utterly terrified. When Officer Diaz returned, he confirmed my fears. "Classic intimidation tactics," he said, "dusting for fingerprints. They want you scared." "It's working," I admitted. That afternoon, I threw essentials into a suitcase and called my brother Calvin. He sounded annoyed but agreed I could stay. "Just temporary," he grumbled. "Melanie's using the guest room for her crafting." Melanie, my sister-in-law, greeted me with unexpected warmth when I arrived at their suburban ranch home. "Margaret, you poor thing." She hugged me tightly. "Calvin told me what's happening with Emily." "That's not the niece I know." Calvin was less sympathetic. "You spoiled that girl. Now you're paying for it." That night, lying on their lumpy sofa bed, I felt utterly defeated. I'd lost my home, my daughter, and my dignity in less than a week. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Court date set. Emergency injunction hearing Monday 9 a.m. Be ready. 3 days. 3 days to prepare for the fight of my life. The next morning, Melanie cornered me in the kitchen while Calvin was in the shower. "There's something you should know," she whispered, glancing toward the bathroom. "About Thomas's gambling." "What gambling?" I asked, coffee cup frozen halfway to my lips. Script part separator ===. Melanie looked nervously toward the bathroom door. "Calvin made me promise never to tell you, but I think you need to know. Thomas had a gambling problem, poker mostly. He lost a lot of money over the years." I felt like I'd been slapped. "That's ridiculous. I would have known." "Would you?" She raised an eyebrow. "Men are good at hiding things, Margaret. Especially from wives who don't want to see." I shook my head. "Thomas and I told each other everything." Melanie sighed. "He borrowed money from Calvin. A lot of money. Nearly $50,000 over the years." The room seemed to tilt. "That's impossible. We didn't have that kind of money to lose." "Exactly." She lowered her voice further. "I think that's why he changed his will at the end. Calvin was pressuring him to repay the loans." My mind reeled. Was this why Thomas had left the house solely to me? To protect it from his debts? When Calvin emerged from the shower, I watched him with new eyes. Had my brother-in-law been part of this all along? Was Emily just continuing what her uncle had started, trying to force me out of my home to recover old gambling debts? I called David immediately, stepping outside to the backyard for privacy. I need you to look into something else, I told him. My husband's possible gambling debts. And loans from my brother Calvin. David was silent for a moment. That would explain some discrepancies I found in Thomas's finances. There were cash withdrawals I couldn't account for. My world was unraveling thread by thread. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my family, was being called into question. This changes our strategy, David said.
Meet me at my office in an hour.
Bring any financial records you have. Script part separator ===. I slipped away from Calvin's house, claiming I needed to pick up more clothes. David's office was already buzzing with activity when I arrived, his paralegal sorting through stacks of papers. Margaret, David greeted me, looking tired but determined. We've uncovered something interesting. He gestured to his computer screen. Thomas made several large cash withdrawals in the months before his death, patterns consistent with gambling. But look at this. He pointed to bank statements showing deposits into Thomas's personal account, deposits that matched the withdrawals exactly.
I don't understand, I said.
Your husband wasn't gambling away money, David explained. He was hiding it. These deposits went into an account under both your names, but at a different bank than your primary accounts. Why would he hide money from me? David looked grim. Because of this. He showed me a letter from an attorney representing someone named Alexis Chen. This woman was threatening to sue Thomas for breach of contract over a business deal gone wrong. He was protecting your assets. My head spun. So there was no gambling addiction? No gambling. Just a man trying to shield his family from financial threat. David leaned forward. And here's where it gets interesting. Guess who Alexis Chen is dating now? I felt a chill. Richard Blackwood? Bingo, David said. This isn't random, Margaret. Richard's been targeting you deliberately. Script part separator ===. I stumbled back into my chair, the implications washing over me like ice water. This was never about Emily, was it? Richard found her to get to me, to our house. I believe so, David confirmed. Richard dated Alexis Chen when she was pursuing legal action against Thomas. When that failed, he moved on, but clearly never forgot about your family's property. So all of this, Emily's sudden coldness, the fake will, the threats, it's all been orchestrated by Richard to settle some old score? My voice cracked with the weight of it all. Or to finally get the property he's been eyeing for years. Your home sits on nearly an acre in a prime development area. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. We have to show Emily. She needs to know she's being manipulated.
We will, David promised.
But carefully. Richard has already shown he's willing to resort to intimidation. If he realizes we know the full story, he might become more dangerous, I finished. The courtroom hearing was just 2 days away. I needed evidence that would not only protect my home but open my daughter's eyes to the man she thought she loved. That night, I couldn't sleep on Calvin's lumpy sofa bed. Around 3 a.m., my phone lit up with a text message. Unknown number. Still digging, Margaret? 2 can play that game. Ask Thomas about Seattle. Ask him what happened with the Peterson deal. My blood ran cold. Thomas was dead. Whoever sent this didn't just want to frighten me. They wanted to destroy whatever remained of my trust in my husband. I forwarded the text to David, adding, someone's watching me, and they know things about Thomas the first don't. I stood on the courthouse steps, the spring sunshine warm on my face after months of storms, both literal and figurative. Richard's sentence had been announced just moments ago, 5 years for fraud, with additional charges pending for breaking and entering and criminal threats. The evidence David had meticulously gathered had been damning. Emily stood awkwardly to my side, her eyes puffy from crying. I don't know how to apologize, she whispered. I was so blind. I took her hand. Love makes fools of us all sometimes. It wasn't love, she said bitterly. It was manipulation. And I fell for it completely. David approached, briefcase in hand. Ready to go home, Margaret? Home. My beautiful house that was still mine. More than ready. As we walked toward the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text. I expected it to be Calvin or Melanie, who had become surprisingly supportive once the full story emerged. Instead, it was an unfamiliar number. This isn't over. Some secrets stay buried. Some don't. I showed David, who frowned. Another threat? No, I said, slipping the phone back into my purse. Just a desperate attempt to rattle me. But I'm done being rattled. Over these past months, I'd lost my illusions but found my strength. I discovered that my marriage hadn't been perfect, but Thomas had loved me enough to protect me, even from his own mistakes. I'd learned that family bonds can break, but can also heal. Emily and I had a long road ahead, but we were both committed to the journey. Most importantly, I'd learned that I wasn't just Thomas's widow or Emily's mother. I was Margaret Wilson, survivor, fighter, and a woman who would never again allow herself to be pushed aside. Whatever secrets still lurked in my family's past, I would face them standing tall. In my own home. On my own terms.